Okay, Paul, now we get to what we are really here for. We're about to sink our teeth into those 3 wonderfully inspiring books. Before I get into that, let's talk process. What are your 3 rules before writing a book?
There's, with children's books, to me what's important is that it's a really good story. And so what I spend my time looking for is what's a really good story, and then how do we craft that? And I've worked a lot with authors, and you write and you rewrite, and then and then you want it to be culturally relevant, and so you always want to be thinking, who's going to be reading this? Who is this book written for? What's going to resonate with them? And so once you get the manuscript done, then you go out and have it reviewed by other local people and say, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And then I'm always worried, well, maybe my words aren't that great, so I always try to hire the best artists I can possibly find. So like with Amani, I found the most famous artist in Uganda was still there, which was really cool, and so I called them and we talked. And it took us about a year to get the project done. And what was wonderful is Amani was very much a joint venture where I would write the text, and then Jovan would just change it all. and it was wonderful, and so we had that really good give and go. And kept the story, and then the process is just, I'm a recovering perfectionist, is trying to, is this going to work? And then you test drive it on people. And what was interesting about Amani is I had my now 28-year-old son, who was like 23 then, to read it, and he says, Dad, it doesn't end well. He says you have to have the daughter and the dad reconciling. And so the last page is where the dad is finally accepting her as a Boda-Boda rider, and it kind of makes the story. And so that's just, being humble and saying, because you want it to be the best it can possibly be. It's not about me. In fact, our original idea was, because I'm an American, was to come up with an African name, so they'd all be written with a pen name.
Well, let's provide some context. So, Amani, the Boda-Boda Rider, or the Boda-Boda.
Boda-Boda.
Boda-Boda Rider. And essentially it is a young Muslim girl. It's set in Uganda. She is dead set on being a Boda-Boda rider, which is completely unheard of at the time, because it's a career that's reserved for boys only, in her country. And it's truly a story about resilience, isn't it? And just determination. And it challenges gender stereotypes. It challenges cultural norms, societal norms. What inspired the story, and where does the name Boda-Boda come from?
Boda-Boda come from when Uganda and Kenya weren't getting along. They wouldn't let anybody cross the border, and so if you would have to be dropped off at the border, and then you'd have to go over and get another taxi or another bicycle to drive you. And so you'd stand on the border and you go, Boda-Boda, and then somebody would come and collect you, and then you would go.
Yes.
And so that's how it happened, and so now it grew from there. But what inspired this is, when I have written a lot on life success, what are the causes of success for adults, and spent lots of time, speaking at universities or on different venues on what the causes of success, and as a motivational speaker and all that. Then realize that if the world is not going to change with adults, it'll change with children, and so. And then I thought, well, what's the most important thing that a child has to know to be able to be successful? That they can do anything. I can. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right, is what Henry Ford said. And so the first goal was, how do we write a book where a girl and it overcomes a lot of different things, and then what are those stereotypes? What's going to make it very interesting? And everybody loves Boda. Kids love Boda-Bodas. So what's interesting about Amani, because women will say, this is more for girls. Boys just love this book because it's got Boda-Bodas, it's got cars, it's got lorries in it. You got all this stuff going on, and so it's been very attractive. And a funny story on Amani. So Amani is about you can doing anything. And so when we go out and do teacher out in the schools with the book, we'll have the kids go, I can be anything. I can, and they'll do this. And what was interesting is one day, when I was at our house in Uganda, a guy that owned a travel agency came, and he saw that I had written the book, and he goes, I know that book. And I said, wow. He says, yeah. I said, and he says, you wrote that book? Wow. He says, I like it so much that I bought it for all my staff. And he said, I love it. It's my favorite book, and I'm 44. You know, and so I always say I write for 0 to 88.
Yeah.
And then a 10-year-old girl came in the compound to see from my kid's school or something. And she saw that I wrote the book, and I said, well, you know, what did it tell you? And then she goes just like this, that I can be anything. And I'm like, that was so wonderful to know that it's having that sort of impact on the kids, because when we would go into the schools, there's no books in most of the schools in Uganda. And how do you teach literacy? How do you teach without books? And so we're trying to make all of our books so that if that's the only book that's in the house, are they going to be able to really enjoy it? And there's a lawyer friend was telling me that it's her son's favorite book, and she said, I made up 100 different stories with it. She says, well, I know the storyline, but she says, then I make up stuff. Yeah. And in Uganda, we have 54 languages, and here we've got many languages too. In Africa, about 3,000. And so we teach what the basic storyline is. So I'll usually have an interpreter that will tell it in the local language, and then the mother or the father or the caregiver can tell the basic storyline from looking at the pictures. And then we just tell parents to just make up stories based on the pictures so that the child can fall in love with the book.
In fact, there's a story, a poem rather, in the book called I Can, which I absolutely loved. And I'm glad you write for 0 to 88-year-olds, because this 45-year-old found it very relatable. It resonated tremendously. And, you know, even at 45, you also need the reminder that you can.
Yes.
Because even as adults, a lot of the time, you know, we battle with confidence, we battle with imposter syndrome, you know, all of that. Right, and so whether you are 4 years old or whether you are 88, sometimes you do need that added motivation.
Yes.
Something else that I loved is the artwork in this book. I really loved the artwork. From, you know, right off the bat, open the book, there was a map of Africa, and it has the literal translations of the countries on the continent. And I thought that was pretty smart and super interesting, you know, to go through the actual literal translations of what the country names mean. There were also very intentional bits and pieces, you know, all over the place, like having the Pope riding on the Boda-Boda. There were names of real Nobel Prize winners on the blackboard, and real books. I went and I Googled to see whether the books that were lying on the bedroom floor were actual books by real authors, and they were. Yeah. So tell us about this remarkable artist.
So Jovan is probably 5 years older than me, and he, you know, born in Uganda, raised there, very educated, and very self-educated, so he reads like crazy, very interested in what's going on. But what's wonderful about Joe, he's just a happy guy, you know what I'm saying? And he's just seen it all because he's been through all the traumas that they've had in Uganda. And he was a very famous artist. He was back when Uganda was more stable, before Idi Amin and everything got really bad. He was invited to sell his art in Europe, and invited there and celebrated as an artist. And he chose to come back to Uganda, which I really think is special, to help his country, and very committed. And so we, you know, I'm still trying to remember how we eventually got together, but you know, we just met each other, and we just, you know, had a 3-hour conversation, just liked each other, talking about politics and talking about everything. And he looked at this book very, very, very seriously. And what I tell all of our artists, I said, I want every page of our books to be able to win a prize in a children's book fair. I want every page obsessed over. So no matter where you open that book in that page, it is perfect. And so and we obsess over that. And and some artists get frustrated, but most don't. And we say, okay, you need to get this more. We need more detail. This has to be done. And I've had whole projects done where they've never been printed because we just could not get it right. And so Jovan was really was great to work with. And he'd come to our compound. You know, my wife would make him tea, and he would, you know, so he could
collaborative process.
Yeah, very, very collaborative. Yeah, all the books are collaborative because you want to get the culture right, and you want it to be the best that it can be, and so you want inputs to make it the best that it can be, because you don't want it to be about yourself. You want it to be, is this going to work?
And representative.
It's going to be representative. And the most important thing is, are kids going to like it? And a lot of books are not written for kids. They are written so that the adult will buy it because it's got the right cover, but there's no story in it. Or because the librarian will say, oh yeah, we have to have a book on diversity, so let's have this book on diversity, where the kids don't even read it, because it's kind of like I always say, I don't write, this is how we try to teach children about literacy and to get excited. The tree is big. Boy, that's a story I want to learn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You want stories. Stories are what, and then people say, well, you want your stories. There was a giant publisher that wanted to publish our books, and so they loved Amani, but they wanted to go through and they wanted to take all the larger words and make them small. They said, we want to make this for age 8 to 12, and I said, no way. I said, you want it? I write for 0 to 88. I think children need to hear those big words. Every parenting research, all the parenting research said, you talk to children like you talk to adults. You want them to say, my finger is uncomfortable. I want a plaster.
Develop the vocab.
Yeah, not I have an ouchie on my finger. Can you please? You know what I'm saying? And then you want full sentences. And so, what does the publishing industry do? The education, they like that you have all these stratified books, because then they can sell more books. Why not make a book that resonates with a 0-year-old, and we teach parents how they can use it with their young child by just reading the pictures. They don't have to read and to an 88-year-old enjoying it. Because what causes literacy is two things. One is hearing a lot of words before you're 5, hearing lots of words. The second thing is falling in love with illustrations and books. Nothing to do with letters. You'll eventually, if you fall in love with a book, then you'll want to learn you'll say, Mommy, what does that word mean? Or, Daddy, what does that word mean? And then that's when magic happens.
Well, talking about falling in love with the illustrations, I mean, there are a couple of surprise elements in this book. One that jumped out at me was also that interactive element where you find a hidden answer at the bottom of a page. I don't want to give too much away, spoiler alert and all that, but there's mention of a mountain peak, and somewhere there is the hidden answer. But the other surprise element is this little critter that's on every page, a little bug.
Yep.
Who is that, and why is he there?
So I'm going to show it on here. So on Amani, every page has a bug on it, and with parents, you're trying to teach parents how to teach literacy to the children, and so we give them prompts. And so every page has a bug on it, and so you say to the child, where's the bug? Where's the praying mantis? Where's the bug? And then the mother is interacting, because where magic happens in literacy is send, receive, not just dumping information on the child, but the child needs to respond. And so this way the parent can say, where's the bug? What's funny about that is, so all of our books we ask the artists to choose a bug or a critter. So some of them have birds, some of them have grasshoppers, all different. Everybody has chosen for our books a different thing. We leave that up to the artist. And then we don't tell them whether they should hide them or not. But what's a funny story about this, so my now 10-year-old, but who was 5, William got a hold of a box of books, and he got a black magic marker, and he went, and every book he circled every one of the bugs in all the pages to make it so the next kid could find the bugs, which I thought was really cute.
Yeah, very cute.
So that's why those are there. And the other thing we try to do is make it so that no matter where you open the book up, it's just fun, and you get pulled into the stories, and that's what causes literacy. And there's no right way to read a book. You can read it upside down, you can read it backwards and forwards. You just want kids to fall in love with books. And then we do a glossary to help teachers use it as a teaching tool. Because often this will be the only teaching tool they may have in their classroom. Well,
the last word on that glossary is wonderful, which I think totally, captures the true essence of the book. But on a serious note, the story of Amani also tackles important themes like cultural norms and gender norms. And I understand that you got a little bit of pushback around some of these perspectives, from a religious perspective, from a cultural perspective, gender, and so on. What happened?
Well, one interesting thing is, so we took Amani to a girls' school. It was run by a nun. And she said, I can't use this book because it tells girls that they can be anything. Girls can't be anything. They should learn how to knit and take care of a house. And
giving them lofty ideas, is it?
Yeah, giving them lofty ideas that they can be anything. And also they shouldn't ride on Boda-Boda for sure. That's, oh my gosh, how disgusting. So she wasn't really happy with it. So obviously that book didn't end up in her school. Another interesting thing is I met this teacher that was taking her children back to go to school, and they were it's an American school in Japan for service people. And she loved Amani. And she said, I want to take it to my parents that are parent friends that are also teaching kids. And she said the teachers can't use it because it features a Muslim girl. Mm. And she said if they introduce a Muslim girl to the class, they'll get such pushback. And so which I find fascinating, but it's almost like a banned book for some of these concepts. The other thing is that it's very inclusive about religions, and so in the book, Amani, when she asks, because she's getting pushback on being able to ride the Boda-Boda, she asks her grandfather, does the Quran say that a girl can't be a Boda-Boda rider? So he goes to all the imams and they say, no, there's nothing in her, she can be a Boda-Boda rider.
And she asks about the Bible.
Right. And then nothing in the Bible says that you can't be a Boda-Boda rider. And so that's to teach respect, that we want that, we don't make those assumptions, we're showing respect.
But she also broadens their own thinking, because even through the illustration, you can see them having an aha moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and also respecting her, showing that she should ask. Life is about relationships. We all want our children to grow. We want them to be successful. We want them to be good communicators. But what do we do as adults? We say, go away, right? Or I'll give you the answer, instead of having that child discover it themselves. And that's how you really learn, is when you experience it.
Paul, before we move on to parenting with love, one final question for you on Amani. If you were to be a Boda-Boda rider and you were going on a 3-hour trip, who would you take along as your passenger?
My wife.
Okay,
Amy,
other than Amy.
Amy would go. It's funny because when we lived in Uganda, that's you got around on Boda-Boda, and so we had our own helmets so that we could wear them, and that was just very normal. But what's interesting is a lot of people won't ride Boda-Bodas, but that's really the best way to get around. And so you end up having Boda-Boda riders that that you can trust.
So we're sticking with Amy, are we?
Yeah, Amy would be for sure the one that would be on the back with me.
So not Oprah, not Mother Teresa, and we're going with Amy. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Probably, for sure.
Excellent.